3, 2, 1. How's it going, everyone? You're watching Ash on Comics. My name is Ash, and today is Wednesday, so that means it's another Ash Wednesday. Joining me, as always, is the immortal Stan the Man, the godfather of comics, a great inspiration to me and many others who will never be forgotten by me as long as I'm into comics. Also, trusty sidekick to the channel, resident intern, mascot, expert on all things trash, and celebrity guest host Forky. Glad to have you. Celebrity he's in a movie, in case you didn't know. Today, we have a special Red Communist edition of Ash Wednesdays. This is issue 19, if you've been following along. Yes, Red Communist edition means we're going to get political. Sorry, it's got to happen. Hold on to your hats. But first, before we get into politics, we have an American institution built on capitalism, built on mom and apple pie, everything that's great about America. Part of a tradition for Ash on Comics is my Wednesday ritual where I go to In-N-Out Burger and I get lunch with my comics. And it's something I love to do. I love to pick up my comics at the store, talk to the staff. They were really friendly today. And then I go to get burger. I get a special order. They never give me anything but a smile, even though my burger is kind of a pain to order. They put it in a box for me, and always great customer service. It's a delicious burger. And you might be, why are you showing this on YouTube? Like, what are you doing? Well, it's a long story if you haven't followed the channel. It's just become sort of a tradition. I do it for myself, but I just started showing it, and it just sort of stuck. And now if I don't show the burger, people are like, where's the burger? So this one is a little bit sloppy. The patties slid off each other a little bit, which can happen. The cheese moves, but it's not their best work, but it's going to taste absolutely delicious. I can't wait to eat it. I'm going to dive into this. You cannot get these, by the way, in communist China or any other communist country. But you can stand in bread lines. We'll see you in a sec. All right. Thank you, as always, for indulging me on my ritual every Wednesday of getting a double-double. Man, when I first started out, I used to talk a long time about things, about In-N-Out, and go this long thing. And I try to get it down to like 30 seconds. I don't want to waste your time. I know you can't eat the burger. And some of you are like, man, Ash, you're making me hungry. Well, that's kind of the point. There's no real harm in that. And hopefully you've got a really cool eatery. If you don't have an In-N-Out nearby, hopefully you have a really cool like local establishment that's like your favorite place that you can go to. If you have the ability to on Wednesdays, depending on your schedule, when you get new comics, it's a great ritual to do. Get some good grub, get a good comics, sit down and read them. I get to make these videos, which actually a lot of work kind of goes behind them. You wouldn't know for how trashy they come out. But anyways, I want to get on to the topic, which is the future is young. So DC Comics tweeted out the future is young. I think they also Instagrammed this picture, which is the upcoming Dark Knight book by Frank Miller. I'm excited about because I love Frank Miller, and I'm an unabashed fanboy, but that's not what this topic is about. So I recently just tweeted this as well. On my Twitter, you can see here, I put the future is young, Hong Kong, free Hong Kong. You can see in my Twitter handle. I also have the Hong Kong hashtag permanently on my name right now. Hong Kong is the freedom movement of our age. It's vitally important. We've had over the history of the years, we've had different things like, first you had World War II, right, which is fighting for democracy, whatever. But really, it was, in my opinion, starting with the Korean War, when the Russia wouldn't go, back down. They started spreading their communist influence. I should say the Soviet Union. The Korean War, then the Vietnam War. You had these different instances where there were just extensions of the Cold War between the United States and America and their allies, NATO versus Warsaw Pact, very much democracy versus socialism. And it's really weird being a child of that era to grow up today and see so many young people advocating for socialism. Americans, oh, we should be more socialist. We need a socialist. It's like the horrors of what socialism brings. But they live in a world today that, number one, their education, the state the education in this country, public education, is run by the state. So if we have liberal power in the state, then the state's going to use that power to control the education. They're going to, propagandize to our kids, and they're going to grow up seeing the world in a different light. Then, on top of that, you have all of higher education follows that same line. All the major universities, almost without fail, are all extreme, not even just leftist institutions, but extreme leftist progressive institutions. And not just like, oh, hey, that's kind of where we're leaning to, but like actual indoctrination centers. And so you have America's youth being brought up in public schools with this, and then the supposed brightest and finest, or whatever, that go on for higher education just get a further bathing in this milk of propaganda and socialist lies, and it's sad. And then on top of that, both parties, whether you don't go to college or you do, you come out and you're just surrounded by a corporate news media that continues to bombard you with one-sided socialist propaganda, to convince you that everything you know, everything you hear about conservatism, republicanism, capitalism, all these things are just evil lies. Socialism is the dream, and it's being suppressed by the evil white patriarchy that just wants to enslave you. And nothing is further from the truth. Anyway, so fast forward to today. This is an old story. This actually hit earlier in the week, and I thought, this is what I got to talk about this week. So you've probably heard it on bigger channels than mine. DC took down their social media posts because of pressure from China. Now, this is amongst many other companies doing similar moves. And you can see here, there's some truth to, the use of this slogan from Hong Kong, which we'll get into. Let's get over to the interwebs. So this is a newspaper called the Epoch Times, which is, if you want non-liberal, propaganda, this is a good place to get your news. At least from my recommendations. DC Comics criticized for removing Batman image after claims that it supported Hong Kong protesters. DC Comics has been heavily criticized for removing an image advertising its new Batman comic on social media last week after some said it appeared to show support for ongoing protests in Hong Kong. The image, uploaded on social media to promote the forthcoming Batman comic titled Dark Knight Returns the Golden Child, due to be released on December 11th. Thanks, dog. We needed you to walk by right then. Depicted the iconic fictional hero Batman poised to throw a flaming Molotov cocktail in front of the slogan, "The future is young." However, shortly after the image was posted online, some Chinese internet users said the ad was a veiled reference to the escalating Hong Kong pro-democracy protests that have continued for nearly 6 months. Now, the irony about this is, from my understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected, my understanding is China doesn't have, this is known, they don't have full access to the internet. They don't have an open and free internet. It's censored. They're only allowed to see and hear what the government allows them to see and hear. That right there should be everything you need to know about the evils of socialist tyranny. That's it. As soon as you hear the government will only let you hear what they want you to hear, you immediately know they're full of shit. Anyone who has to lie or censor to support their point of view is wrong. That's just it. That's the first red flag. Anyways. But that's not enough. So my understanding is that Chinese don't have access to Twitter. So this is what's happening is there's Chinese, in America I'm gathering this at least, that are submitting this information. And of course, the government has access to Twitter. But just it's not like your normal users can get on there. Of course, the government can get on there to monitor. So, they say things like the black clothes represent Hong Kong, the mask represents Hong Kong, the Molotov cocktail represents Hong Kong. What else here doesn't represent Hong Kong? Another Weibo, which is Weibo, I believe, is the internet name that the Chinese have. Nothing represents Hong Kong. None of that. It's a picture of a comic book where a character is throwing a Molotov cocktail. And it doesn't take place in Hong Kong, doesn't take place in China, has nothing to do with Chinese people. But, of course, the Chinese don't like that. And the reason why the Chinese don't like that is the same reason why progressives and liberals here in our country don't like certain messages being talked about. Because it destroys their narrative. It goes against their idea. They don't want the idea that you should have freedom of speech. They hate that. Fortunately, in America, we have this thing called the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, because damn, that would be one of the first things to go. And you can already see that in our Congress. They're trying to limit free speech, and they have successfully in some areas. We don't actually truly have free speech in this country anymore. It's kind of a veiled thing. And they can only push it so far because that amendment is still there. And we haven't busted past that seam. Now, I'm very upset at DC doing this. And some will go, well, why, Ash? I mean, they said they're going to keep the cover. No, they're bending towards an evil, authoritarian, socialist regime that is anti-America. DC Comics is an American company. I'm an American. I buy DC Comics with US dollar bills. Okay? Now, China is not an overt enemy of the United States. We're not at war. But they are an adversary, and they are an enemy of sorts. They absolutely are not part of our culture. They're not part of our society, and they're not part of our country. And if you were to give away, say, secrets to China, you would be tried for treason and presumably have the death penalty, is what's the penalty for treason. I have to watch what I say because the YouTube gods, don't want you talking about certain things. And that's my point. We're moving ever forward to a hard leftist, communist/fascist society. And you might say, oh, actually, those guys are opposed. Well, yes and no. They're opposed in the sense that fascists and communists hate each other, but they're not opposed in the sense that they're both far left regimes. And the reason I say we're heading towards one/the other is because we haven't really made up our mind. We have one group of far leftists in this country that are pro-communist, the guys wearing the Che Guevara shirts, the guys wearing the actual hammer and sickle, all that stuff, the pro-Venezuela. And then you've got the other hard left that are pro, big tech, they're pro-censoring people, they're pro-controlling your speech, everything like that. That's the fascist side. Anyways, I'm just explaining my point of view and where I'm coming from. Here we see DC Comics isn't the first Western company to be accused of caving to Chinese censors over Hong Kong pro-democracy protests. Blizzard, Google, who I'm using right now, I'm worried if this video is going to get banned, Apple, and the National Basketball Association have drawn criticism for reining in free speech in an attempt to placate the Chinese regime. This is a very dangerous area, especially when it comes to media. DC is a media outlet. They're owned by a telecommunications company. Arguably the second, if not the biggest telecommunications company in the United States. This telecommunications company is buying into media companies. They bought Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers had DC Comics. Warner Brothers, I believe, also had Time Warner. These mega conglomerates are controlling what you see and hear. They're also controlling what you say. As we go into the future, more and more of our speech is done on these social media platforms, which are owned by big tech. Now, on these social media platforms, I hear it all the time, Ash, there's no free speech on Twitter. There's no free speech on Facebook. Blah, 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 blah. That's a private company. They can do what they want. You're correct. But when 95% of the speech in this country is done on social media platforms and they can now choose to censor your speech, you've effectively circumvented the Constitution and you're to infringe everyone's ability to speak freely. When we don't actually have the ability to communicate out in a town square anymore, because that's just not how society does things, you've effectively censored everybody. Now, I was really, really pissed off. I've cooled down since this story broke. But I look at this and I say, I've sitting here and I've been a big proponent of comic books. I see people all the time, Ash, I'm canceling my subscriptions. I'm not buying comics anymore. I know people pirate tons of comics, advocate pirating comics. And I'm like, no, I don't buy comics, support. You've heard me before if you follow this channel. And now when I heard this story, I was like, fuck it, pirate it all. Pirate it all. Because here's why. If you are anti-capitalist, if you don't like this country that made you, this billion-dollar entity because of this capitalism that's so bad, okay, fine, cool. Let me just take everything for free. That's what you want in a communist society. Everyone's provided for. We can just all have. We don't need to buy things. We don't need to follow capitalist rules, right? Right? It's a bunch of hypocrisy. It's not about ideology or anything. It's about control. It always comes down to control. And I don't think DC Comics actually gives a shit one way or the other. They're just looking at the bottom line. And some bigwigs were like, oh, we don't want to piss off China, because guess what? Their biggest movie, Aquaman, which was the first $1 billion, well, I don't know if it was the first. I think it might have been the first $1 billion of the DCEU, made more money in China than it did in the US. That's something that didn't used to be. China used to be a good supplement to your income, but it wasn't that you made more in China. So now China's economy is becoming bigger than ours. So American companies care more now about the Chinese dollar. They care more about Chinese customers than they care about American customers. And if they don't care about you, why should you care about them? So I'm in a weird impasse right now. The one side of me says, no, you've got to support, you got to buy the comics. That's the way it should be. Stealing is wrong, yada, yada, yada. I'm not here to lecture you. I'm just telling you how I think. And then the other side of me is like, no, just do it. Screw it. They don't care. They don't want your money. They want to support enemies of this country. They want to be pro-communist. Let them learn what pro-communism means. So anyways, I just wanted to share my thoughts on this. And if you've been listening this far, I really appreciate you indulging me, letting me talk about this. I know a lot of you are like, we don't want politics. We don't come here for politics. And I understand that. I really, really do. And I don't want my channel to become political. But this is sometimes where these things cross the line. I didn't ask DC to do this. I didn't want DC to do this. And I don't want to be silent on it just because I'm afraid to talk about politics. I should be able to get things off my chest and say how I feel. Now, you may not agree with me. Maybe it's not that big of a deal to you. I'm guessing if you're younger than me, if you were born in, post 21st century, you see the world differently than I do. If you were born, even if you're a millennial, you never saw the wall fall. You don't know what the Soviet Union was. You may have read it in history books. You have a different idea, and you have been brought up to see decades of media lying to you about the blissful awesomeness of socialism. Well, meanwhile, people over in Venezuela are eating their pets. Well, I get to eat an In-N-Out burger. Think about that. Let's move on to some happy stuff. All right, it's time for Marvel versus DC. This is one of my favorite things I like to do. It's a fun little thing, just way to look at Marvel and DC. See kind of who's doing better, the little competition, and also to mock them. Because this all started with comparing Marvel versus DC. Not actually, it's all started with Marvel number ones and mocking all the number ones that they do, and they're trying to fleece customers. So let's get on with the show. We're going to start off with digital sales. Now, digital sales are pulled from Comixology. Every week, they show their top 10 comics that they sell. And I like to just analyze it, not too much, but just kind of look at it and see, because it's an interesting thing. You're not affected by variant covers. You're not affected by collectability or anything. These are comics that have no value other than the ability to read them. And I'm just curious to see what people are willing to spend their hard-earned money just to read. And these numbers aren't inflated. They can't be, double shipped or overshipped the way Marvel does with their comics to inflate the numbers. So I know it's not an accurate tale, because digital readers are different than actual comic book collectors who go to stores, but it's still fun to look at. So starting off the list at number 10, this one pleases me a great deal. Shazam number 8 by Jeff Johns, the master himself over at DC Comics, the man who should be in control of all DC creative. He should be the executive vice president of creative content at DC. I don't know if that's a real title. I just made it up. This guy should be the Kevin Feige of DC, at least for the comics. I don't know about movies. I don't know if he has any talent in filmmaking or anything like that. Although he made Aquaman make $1 billion. So what are you going to do? Shazam is absolutely not a comic book for me. It's not something I can resonate to at all. But I'm so happy that it's here on top 10. And Jeff Johns is doing it. I'm sure he's doing a bang-up job. I understand that he's not just there to write the comics I want. I'm Shazam fans. I'm happy for you. I can't imagine a better person writing your comic book. Let's move on to number 9. East of West, number 44, Jonathan Hickman. I have it on good account from my fellow aficionados over at Thinking Critical, particularly Wes, the main man behind Thinking Critical, loves East of West, Jonathan Hickman. I really am going to break this open one day. I'm backlogged in comics, so I don't need to add to the stack, but I definitely will be picking up the trades and checking this out. I'm very excited. What I've read that I like from Hickman, I love. He's also written some trash that I'm just like, how can this even be the same guy? But this book, I've heard is great, and it's in the top 10. Look, it's not even a Marvel or DC. Next, we got an IDW comic, Star Trek Picard Countdown number 1. Word on the street is that, I guess, is it Paramount? Whoever controls, or CBS controls Star Trek, has announced that the comics would be canon. I don't know if that has any effect on this. Picard series is coming out soon. I know there's a lot of people excited for this, so it makes sense. I always know that the comic writers that write these aren't nearly at the same level, so I don't like reading lesser quality, you know what I'm saying? But hopefully it's great. Hopefully if you enjoy it. I actually like the CBS Star Treks right now. I know everyone's laughing at, but they're better than you think. Next, number 7, we have Detective Comics, and this makes me so happy to see in the top 10. Detective Comics is the best ongoing Batman series. It is absolutely miles ahead of the Tom King Batman run. I just don't understand why people like Tom King's run better. But there you have it. I really recommend this. This is a good story, the Mr. Freeze stuff. This might be the best of the Year of the Villain crossover stuff that I've seen too. So that's a plus. Number 6 is Avengers. And man, do I have a frog in my throat. Hopefully that wasn't loud in the mic. If it was, I highly apologize. I can't pause this because Apple sucks. I could just stop it and then cut it all together. I should have given you a warning. Anyways, this is number 6, Avengers. Jason Aaron is trashing Starbrand like he just destroys everything he puts his hands on. You can see, look at this terrible freaking She-Hulk. He doesn't know how to do things without ruining them. I'm sure he went to the Brian Michael Bendis School of Comics Writing. And, all the kids love them. If you're born in the last 20 years, you probably love this because you don't understand classic comics. You just like the new silly Billy nonsense. And I don't mean that to be disparaging. I'm not trying to insult anyone. Actually, I did read some Avengers, and I do think Jason Aaron actually has some legitimate talent to tell a story. He just botches it with the way he destroys the characters, in my opinion. But anyways, people like it. It's number 6. So what do I know? Number 5, Tales from the Dark Multiverse, Infinite Crisis. This is doing really well. It's a bunch of one-shots. I'm not really happy about the one-shots. I think I talked about this before. I'd rather see it just be like a mini-series called Tales from the Dark Multiverse. And then I just don't like collecting. I like collecting comics. I like a series. One-shots just go down the memory hole. I'd just rather get it in trade then if that's going to be the case, or just borrow it and read it. But this is James Tynion, who I'm a big supporter of. So glad to see that's number 5. Number 4 is Action Comics, a.k.a. Lex Luthor, because the DC editorial just decided to make all these fake names in this generic, bland font and then put the real title over here in the upper left-hand corner, super small. It's confusing everybody. So terrible. This whole concept, as far as like the visual layout, the graphic design, is awful. Someone needs to get fired. But I'm not a fan of Action Comics. Bendis is just terrible. So terrible. I'm even surprised this is crossing over to Year of the Villain, because Bendis doesn't know how to do crossovers. He doesn't know how to work with other people. He doesn't know how to actually do continuity. He doesn't know how to research characters. He only knows how to just go full speed ahead with his own original ideas and not research anything. And it's surprising me. I'm really curious to see how this actually turns out. Next, we have Fallen Angels in our number 3 spot. I think this book is not getting, it's number 3, so obviously it's getting love. But as you're going to see, it's the least love of the Dawn of X books. This might be one of the best books, if not the best. I haven't read issue number 2, but issue number 1 was the best written Dawn of X book I have read. The art was terrible. I absolutely hate all 3 of these characters. So there's a lot going against it, but for me to still walk away and go, yeah, that was the best, is a huge credit to the writer here, Brian Edward Hill, who I love. I wish he was writing something that I cared about. But Fallen Angels. Next, we have New Mutants number 2. Now, this is one of the worst comics I have read all year. This is absolutely the worst Hickman book I have ever read. This is on par. I've read some bad books this year. I read Legion of Superheroes Millennium. That was bad. And I am not sure if this book is better. I think Superheroes Millennium was really terrible. This is probably better. But Legion of Superheroes number 1 versus this book, I don't know. I didn't walk away mad with Legion of Superheroes. I just was like, oh, that was dumb. It was a waste of time. But this book, bothered me. I just hated these characters. They're awful human beings with no story to really speak of, with stupid plot points that they even admit in the book. They talk about things like, well, maybe we shouldn't have sent the only guy who can communicate with Krakoa out into space. Yeah, maybe you shouldn't remind fans of your stupidity by writing that in the book and mentioning it. It's silly Billy nonsense. And some people have pointed out to me well, it's written for a different target audience. But I counter that by saying all of these books are written as a singular story. They're being released in trades as Dawn of X, all the number 1 issues in the reading order that's at the back of these books are being released. So all the number 1s is one trade, and then all the number 2s will be another trade. So you can't, if you're going to do that and tell us one story, you can't have one kid's book, one adult book. You got to keep it consistent, right? Anyways, I hate this book. Apparently a lot of people love it. It's number 2. And number 1 is X-Force, with the most god-awful cover I can think of. I hate this cover with a passion. I hate that character Quentin Quire with a passion. But I have to say this might be the best overall when it comes to writing and art together and characters I care about. Wolverine's one of my favorite characters. It's not a perfect book. There's some definite flaws. I did a video on this, but it's number one. People are excited about it. And when I talk to my peers, I seem to be the lone wolf here. Everyone seems to be loving this book, so take that as you will. Here is the tail of the tape if you want to see the top 10. And we're going to move on to my favorite part. First, we got to compare who won. Marvel got 4, DC got 4. It's a tie. Yay! It's a tie. Everyone gets a participation trophy. Isn't that great? Although Marvel had the top 3, so I guess Marvel gets the tiebreaker. Next, we're going on to Marvel versus DC new number ones. This is where everything started. I like to mock Marvel and now DC because they decided, hey, we could throw up tons of number ones and rip off our fans too. Not only Marvel. So let's get into it. Make sure you buy all of these books because number ones are always worth a fortune. And if you don't get them and keep them in mint collection, or mint collection, I don't even know what I'm talking about, mint condition in your collection, you're going to be sorry. In a couple years when you look back and Venom number 1, $20.99 is worth $100, you're going to be like, darn, I was there when it was on the shelf and I didn't get it. Well, so we start off with Venom $20.99. This is going to set you back $5 because the reason Marvel really wants to do these number ones is they can charge you extra. Number ones sell more than any other issue because Marvel doesn't try to sell you on quality anymore. They don't try to earn your fandom. They try to gimmick it. They know you're going to show up for the number one. The rest of the issues suck, so be it. They can get their sales on those number ones. They'll run 5 to 6 more issues, cancel it. They'll tell you, oh, it was a mini-series all along. Oh, we didn't tell you. Oh, yeah, it was a mini-series, and we're going to reboot it. Oh, yeah, another number one. Oh, and then the Marvel Zombies show up, and they buy all 10 variants of the cover. $5 for Venom, $20.99. Next, we have the most controversial book in quite a long time. Whew, I cannot believe DC had the brass cojones to publish this book and to publish it under the name Deathbringer. Zoe Quinn, the woman who slept her way to where she was in the video game industry and started a whole controversy that we know as Gamersgate, came over to comics because she burned all of her bridges. She ripped off her fans on her Kickstarter, which she still hasn't delivered. She went on vacations and spent all the money and then cried online about how, I'm sorry, I'm broke. And we're like, we gave you $80,000. What happened? Oh, well, he went to Japan and blew it all. Word has it, there were some leaks out that she had slept with someone in the comics industry and she came in DC. Then she killed Vertigo. Then she went over to Marvel. Marvel quickly apparently dropped ties. I don't know. I haven't heard anything since. Now she's back at DC. And right before her book gets published, she's implicated quite heavily in the death of a video game developer who committed suicide based on the things that she did. It's terrible. She's an awful person by all accounts that we can see. DC should have no ties with her, much less producing a book by her called Deathbringer. So that's her new nickname for me. I am now referring to Zoe Quinn as Deathbringer because that's what she does. And she's writing a disgusting book here. Apparently lots of people want to read it, though. I don't know. I don't know if anyone wants to read it. It's a number one. It's going to be worth tons of money because it's Zoe Quinn, right? It's tied up 1-1. Next, we have Annihilation Scourge Nova number 1. Now, Annihilation Scourge, if you haven't heard, is the new big event right on the heels of, I don't know, that symbiote thing that just happened. Well, this time, Marvel's been smart. Every issue of this is a number 1. Here's just one of them. Matthew Rosenberg, Nova. Come on. This has got investment written all over it. Next, we've got Ghost Rider. And by the way, all these books are $5 except for the DC book because DC doesn't fleece his fans. It hasn't learned quite yet how to really rip its fans off like Marvel. So they're only charging you the $3.99. But all the Marvel so far are $5. So we got another $20.99 book, and guess what? It's also a number 1. I think Marvel's just ditching any other numbers. Every book from now on just be a number 1. We also have, look, it's another Annihilation Scourge number 1. Which one do you read first? I would say read number 1 first and then issue number 2, but they didn't do it. All of them are number 1s, which benefits you because guess what? That's more number 1s in your bank that you're going to be able to put on eBay a year from now and retire early. $5. Thor the Worthy, number 1. Man, right before we get the new Thor series number 1 that's launching, we get this Thor that's a number 1. And look, it's written by Walter Simonson, the greatest Thor writer of all time. You know why? It's because it's a reprint. You could just go back and get those Walt Simonson books for real. You might want to. I own them all. I think they're great. Or you can pay for this reprint. Now, fortunately, it's only $4.99 instead of the $7.99 Marvel's been charging for their books. But I think it's maybe because they aren't getting away with it anymore. Ah, man. What is Marvel heads now? 5-1. They're just stuffing DC. But DC's coming back with New Year's Evil for $10. Just what you wanted. Joker as Santa. Get this while it's hot. First appearance of Joker Santa, maybe? I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But it's got Batman Who Laughs. I'm sure Batman Who Laughs hasn't been with Joker Santa before. Come on. Number 1, $10. This is sure not to be in the dollar bin anytime soon. Next. Because Conan being in the Avengers wasn't enough. Now we've got Conan and other Robert E. Howard creations joining up with Moon Knight to run around and have stupid adventures. And there's my phone. Sorry about that. Moving along. You can guess how much that one costs. We have Star Wars Saga. Wow. I opened this book up. This is not even a real book. This book is this is previously on Star Wars is what it is. It's a primer. It just has copy and pasted pictures from old comics and then like a little text box that gives you a little summary of like, this is what happened. And it basically is telling you a summary of what happened, I guess, in the Star Wars line so you can catch up if you didn't read the Star Wars comics. This is something you should give out for free or at a substantial discount. You know, like DC does their 25-cent comics. Aspen does the same thing, 25 cents. Here's a primer to catch you up. Nope, $3.99. This is a ripoff. And then DC returning in a really lame effort. Marvel's crushing them 7-3, but we got Batman, Supergirl, World's Finest, because we all know Batman and Superman aren't the world's finest. They're men. It's the women are the world's finest. Whatever. Nothing matters anymore. Marvel destroys DC and says, we are the champions. Go back to where you came from. You can't do number 1s like us. Marvel had 27 new comics today to DC's 15, almost twice as many. 7 new number 1s, over twice as many. When you take in the variants, Marvel had 61 to 23, almost 3 times as many. Marvel is the reigning champ of fleecing customers. I hope that you're not a victim of that. And that is Marvel versus DC. Thank you so much for enjoying. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I'm making assumptions for you. I enjoyed doing it. I really do try to keep this brief. It's tough. I don't just want to rattle it off. That'd be boring. So that's what we got. Let's move on to viewer mail. Solo Rebirth writes, DC has good writers, but if they're put on the wrong project, then there's no effing point. Jeff Johns handpicked every team for DC Rebirth, and that's why all the books were good. Hickman is basically doing the same thing at Marvel with the X-Men, but not as well as Jeff, which mainly is because Marvel doesn't have the greatest writers. That's true. Like Marvel was getting ready to give Dan Slott the X-Men, but thank God it didn't happen. Yeah, thank God, I guess, but I don't know. It's like, I don't think you can really make X-Men any worse. After Tom Taylor, X-Men Red, X-Men Gold, X-Men Blue crap, after Age of X-Men, after some of these current books, man, that last New Mutant sucked. I would not say Hickman is doing nearly as well as Jeff Johns. I don't think Hickman really picked the talent like we're led to believe. I think Hickman was offered, here's here's 5 people, pick 4. And he's just like, here's the best 4 that, I don't know. Like, it seems like a real hodgepodge. But I do appreciate your comment, and I do agree. I love when people mention Jeff Johns and his contributions. Moving along, Frag Minion. Marvel really needs to stop using that god-awful bright pink in all of its comics. Yeah, I know. Girls love their pink. F Marvel. Couldn't have said it better myself. Dave Asanowicz, in my DC Previews comments, says, I picked Batman Beyond backup. We'll be dropping Supergirl. We'll switch out Detective with Justice League when Venditti starts. Budget. Only 1 bi-weekly title. Keeping Hawkman and JLO. That's Justice League Odyssey. Freedom Fighters is finishing up and dipping my toes in Marvel with some Ghost Rider 2099. Dialing back in 2020. Going to get back into Animal Rescue. Plus, I'm running out of room. Well, I can understand that. That's a big thing. That's kind of what part of the reasons I pare down as well, too. The one thing I don't understand is why are you dropping Detective Comics, which is the best Batman book. I kind of understand picking up Batman Beyond, Jurgens. Batman Beyond's not my thing, but Jurgens is fine. But Tomasi's killing it on Detective, man. That's like, it's weird that you're dropping that. And Justice League starting with Venditti, I'm only going to take that as you're not really a Scott Snyder fan. I think Justice League's already amazing. But if Snyder's got to leave, I'm happy that Venditti's going to jump on. And obviously with your Freedom Fighters love, you like Venditti as well. And then Ghost Rider 2099? Why not actual Ghost Rider? I hear really great things about the current Ghost Rider run. I don't know. I'm not a Ghost Rider guy, but thanks for writing. And anyone who's into animal rescue, saving animals, is a hero to me. Dave, you're one of my heroes. Good on you, man. And then Eric Breen, some stranger to the channel, never seen this guy before, says, as a 57-year-old who put down a comic to watch this review of a comic book, I ain't saying shit about wine ants at a Twilight screening. Yep, great point. Now, it's time for some comics. Thank you for making it with me all the way to the end where I do my comic book haul. That's the meat and potatoes. It's probably the number one thing I think people tune in for. That's why I save it for last. Always save the best for last. And always show your receipts. Today was a cheapo day. I'm trying to get under $25 a week. And look at that, I succeeded. Right on. Thank you, Marvel and DC, for making less good comics that I don't have to buy. You are awesome. I don't think that's the point of your business. Remember, kids, always show your receipts. I didn't show you my receipt for my In-N-Out burger because I pirated it on the internet. Don't tell anyone. Starting off, today, first book. I'm going to do the indies first. One of my absolute favorite books, Usagi Yojimbo. I'm glad this is in a monthly format that I can collect. No gimmicks, no horse shit, no politics, no social agendas, nothing. Just brilliant writing that's not decompressed, written for trade. It's not self-absorbed. It's not pretentious. There's no silly Billy, goofy sitcom banter. Stan Sakai is a brilliant writer, and he's one of the few people that can write amazing stories in just 1 or 2 issues. You don't got to read these long arcs. Occasionally he will do a long arc, but mostly they're just short stories, and you can jump in at any time. It's a series of adventures. It's almost like they're parables. Now, you might want to start at the beginning to kind of get some of the origins of Usagi, but honestly, you don't need to. This is the epitome of what comics used to be, other than the cartoony nature of a cartoon rabbit. But it's not silly like it looks. Trust me. This is the type of material that is appropriate for children. It's not ultra violent. It's definitely not gory. There's no sex or anything. But the content level, the story level is written for adults to appreciate. It's not a kid book. It's an adult book that's appropriate for kids, I guess is the best way to put it. I cannot advocate for this book enough. Hope you enjoy it. Try it out. Issue 6 was a great book to jump on. Actually, issue 4 and 5, the hero story was, that's the best jumping on point. They're all good. Just moving on to DC, a lost and forgotten book, Martian Manhunter. This is a little sleeper that people are sleeping on. Steve Orlando is really impressing me. It's a great mystery book. This is the kind of book people tell me they want Batman to be, and I'm like, well, you got this. I mean, it's telling this great origin of Manhunter. It's got so much depth and complexity to his character. I love it. It's a 12-issue maxi series. I'm kind of glad that it's over, not because the story is bad, but because if it's not going to be an ongoing title, I just want miniseries to be wrapped up because they kind of eat at your pull list. But I like that. It definitely gets recommended from me. Justice League 37, Scott Snyder. His run on Justice League has been super fun. I'm really sad to see him go. I hope he's doing something exciting for me to follow. But at least Robert Venditti is picking up. I hope we don't lose Robert on things like Hawkman, which need him. But Justice League, thumbs up. This is one of the best books of DC that people are sleeping on. And it's better than every Dawn of X book. Yep, I just said it. And then speaking of a book that's not better than every Dawn of X book, it might be actually worse than every Dawn of X book. You got City of Bane, Batman, by Tom King, who is just descending in a pit of madness. Apparently, you're like, Wash, why are you getting it? And it's like, because there's one more issue, and I like James Tynion, and I like Batman, and I was about to drop it, and then I heard, well, it's wrapping up the run, and I was like, all right, I'll just see it through, and I'm just blowing my money on this thing. So, anyways, yeah, that's why it's there. Perfectly honest. Moving on to Marvel, we have Daredevil Through Hell Part 4. Zdarsky and Checchetto on Daredevil is brilliance. Zdarsky without Checchetto is still really good. It's worth keeping the comic going. It really is, though, a low point where you're like, ah, damn it, why is Checchetto not doing this issue? So it's really these highs and lows that really bother me. But overall, it's a great series. They all can't be home runs, but the writing never really goes bad. It just, when it's Checchetto, some of these stories are freaking fantastic. Check out my recent videos I did on the first two parts of Through Hell to see what I'm saying if you're not a person who's in the know about Daredevil. Finally, last, but certainly not least, to a lot of people's eyes, you guessed it, I picked up X-Men because everyone's getting X-Men. X-Men is my favorite comic property of all time. I'm a huge old school X-Men fanboy, and Hickman won me over with the House of X Powers of 10 series. It really did. It's one of the best X stories I've read. I was hoping the setup was going to lead into some brilliant things, and so far I haven't seen them. But I said I'm going to give it a chance because I understand sometimes you need to build up. And the first two issues of House of X and Powers of 10 didn't wow me. I was like, oh, this is what everyone's talking about. It's going to be so great. And then that third issue came along, and I was like, oh, okay, there's something here. And then the next issue came along, and I was like, oh, and it just got great. So I'm willing to give a book. If you earn it, and Hickman has earned it, I'm going to give it a full arc. 6 issues. The thing is that X-Men doesn't really have an arc. They're these one-offs, and that's bothering me. That's not appealing. I don't think that's the way X-Men should be. X-Men was one of the first books to be a saga in mainstream comics, and now Hickman's taking it away from those roots, and it seems really weird to me. And he's letting all these lesser writers do the big story arc chops, and that just, what are you doing? So that's my final tally. What do you think? It's a small pool this week. Six comics. It's more than enough for me. I have a backlog that I have to get through. I also have to pick up on Amazon. I need to pick up the second hardcover omnibus for Descender. Almost through the first hardcover omnibus that I bought, and it's so good. It's so good. I've been promoting Ascender. I did a video out there called Advocating for Ascender. Please check it out. That's probably my favorite book out right now. And I was like getting so antsy that I couldn't read it. So I was like, I'll just go back and read Descender. I was going to wait. And you absolutely 100% do not need to have ever read Descender to enjoy Ascender. Ascender is kind of like the original Star Wars trilogy, and the Star Wars prequels is like Descender. They can go together like that if you want, or you can just have one. Ascender is separate enough, and I also feel like depending on which way you do it, you're going to enjoy it slightly different. There's a benefit to either way. You can either read Descender and then have the benefits of following some of the history, because it's a new protagonist in Ascender, so it's different. Just like the Star Wars, like analogy. It's 10 years later, new protagonist, whole new storyline, but there are some overlapping characters that kind of show up here and there, and so you can kind of fall and have that like, oh, hey, or you can come into Ascender fresh and not know who these characters are, just like you did in Star Wars, right? And you're like, who's this Ben Kenobi guy? And why is he living in a hut? You know, like you didn't know. And it was cool, that mystery of like, who is this guy? And oh, why has he got this kid's lightsaber? Like you have that aspect in Ascender that's really cool. The downside is it's going to be 32-ish issues, and they come out monthly. So you're looking at, a year and a half, 2-3 years of comics, which is great. But you have to wait. Whereas Descender's there right now, and it's like, I couldn't wait anymore. So anyways, enough talking about that. I'm super pumped and hyped on this book. It's better than almost anything I'm reading. Like it puts some of these comics into a new light. So when I'm reading some of these other books and I'm just like, it's trash, it's because I'm seeing it when you put it into comparison, when you read something that's really that excellent. And I'm saying like Ascender is coming across right now like a masterpiece. It's written so brilliantly that you look at some of the things that I'm currently reading and you're just like, this is just chopped liver. Anyways, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the new books. What do you think is going to be the best book? And what do you think is going to be the worst? Every week, I have Stan and Forky make their picks. Stan is making his pick with Usagi Yojimbo, and Forky always bets on bad. Always bet on bad, as Wesley Snipes would say. Isn't that what he said? So, other than Batman, these are probably all good books. I'm hoping X-Men is as good as some people have been telling me. So the first two have been shaky. So I'm hoping. But Martian Manhunter has been solid. Daredevil's great. Justice League great. And Soggy, phenomenal. So that's my pull list. Those are my comics. Tell me what you're getting, guys. I like hearing what you guys are pulling. And if you can, I know it's tougher when you have type it in a but maybe just if your best book that you picked up this week, why you're getting it, or what books you're thinking about stopping, and so forth. I really like hearing that. I really like material that I can put in my viewer mail so I can read it on air, talk about it. So if you have anything like that, I try to pick it out. And we're going on about 10 minutes right now of just the comic book pull. So it's time to end it before Eric Breen starts making fun of me some more in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this far. I hope you had a great new comic book day. I hope my political stuff didn't really bother you. And if it did, maybe you could just skip past it. I'll try to remember to put in the comments timestamps for you all. And let's just have fun. Embrace the comics you love. Remember, it's okay to be critical of the bad stuff. It's okay to be hypercritical and be a demanding customer. That is your right. You pay money. You're the guy or the woman or the girl or I don't know, whoever. You're the person paying the money. Right? They're taking the money. You have every right to be as critical and opinionated as you want about it, but don't lose your joy. Find, even if it's just a couple books, there's great books out there, and hold on to that. Maybe it's Ascender. That's what it is for me. Or Usagi Yojimbo. Or the Thinking Critical aficionados are all swearing on Criminal that I got to check out. There's great books out there. Tell me what's your favorite. I'll see you next time.